The first global football superstar made everyone love, and his tactics were never designed to belittle his opponents. Today we discuss Pele's life, some engaging and curious moment in the history of football of all times. Hi guys, this is Football News 24/7. Before we start, if you are new to this channel, please like and subscribe and hit the bell icon for interesting sports updates. For the generations born just after the end of World War II, the emergence of a teenage Pele during the 1958 World Cup opened the door to a new dimension of a football. Brief televised highlights of Sweden's match were broadcast in a black and white that actually resembled faint shades of grey, but already the Brazilian prodigy seemed sharply focused and bathed in golden glow. The lanky 17 years old with a flat-top haircut scored 6 goals, several of them executed with an uncanny sparkle and yet unimaginable level of techniques, and then wept openly on the shoulder of the team's goalkeeper, Clemor, as victory was secured. For lots of his new admirers in overseas land, Edson's Arantes to Nascimento became the primary complicated foreign name they dedicated to memory. Pele celebrates after Brazil win the 1970s World Cup. He won the tournaments 3 times in 1958, 1962 and 1970 in a 14 years international career. 12 years after that first burst of talent, he won his 3rd World Cup winners medal. The 1917 tournament was watched by many spectators on color television sets, the high proportions of which were purchased specifically for that event. Football never seemed so glorious when Pele, now a mature man at 29, was at the center of a team including Tostão, Jairzinho, Gersons, Roberto Rivelino and Carlos Alberto, a group of masters surrounded by their own golden era. The game is a new level in creativity interplay, with number 10 as its conductor. A handful of footballers including Alfredo Di Stefano, Diego Maradona and Johan Cruyff, generally thought of as Pele's contemporaries, had their own special qualities. In the first instance, a patrician's elegance. In the second, of sardonic cunning, a rare meeting of intelligences and athleticism. What Pele radiated in the third was simpler and appealed more immediately to the eye and heart. It was the quality of joy. It's perhaps above all else this factor that makes him first among equals in the minds of many good judges. No one can be blamed for favoring one of his rivals for the top step on the all-time podium. Each one's unique appeals prompts a different reactions, and you have to include Zinedine Zidane, Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo in there too. But there has something about Pele that made everyone smile as they cheered his exploits. Some things that spoke to how the game can illuminate individual lives and the world as a whole. He was the first world football superstar. More importantly, along with Muhammad Ali and Bob Marley, he became one of the select group of black athletes and entertainers who transcended their field of expertise and achieved global fame in the 20th century, a status only half that of Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela. Although he was accused of leftist sympathies by Brazil's oppressive military government in the 1970s, he was no revolutionary. In general, her public utterances were as liberal as a Miss World contestant campaigning for world peace. But the influence of his presence, his preeminence, helped to loose the chains of ignorant superstitions. In the eyes of the football public, he was primitive and innocent. He carried with him a kind of innocence, no matters how famous he became. This was always the boy who grew up to be the son of some famous goal scorer, but whose own first matches were played on the street of Tres Coraces, his hometown, old for the goalpost. Shoes and ball made a paper of rags stuffed into a sock and tied with string. The freshness and sheer joy of his play were there in the little boy, sending a message that other boys playing in the back street of Belfast or Bolton could easily respond to. No serious scandals has tarnished with image in his 20 years playing career. He was certainly not a perfect man, and he was certainly not softy on the pitch. But he did not despise or disdain. His techniques on the ball shocks opponents, but is never designed to diminish or humiliate them. He did not seek any unfair or illegal advantage in victory. He was gracious and modest. If as always keenly aware of the good fortune he had been blessed with, gave the impressions that he wanted to share his pride and joy with everyone. Between the final in Sweden in 1958 and the final in Mexico in 1970, Pele resembled an perfect athlete. Balance was key in constructions as well as movement. Physically, everything about him matched perfectly, not remarkably thin or heavily muscles. He was quick on the ground in a sudden dart or a long run, as well as the flexibility to outrun opponents with feints. He had the power of defeat tacklers. He had a strong shot and a good jump for a header. But above all, his imaginations was free from earthly limitations. It was there that his first goal made his new international's audience sit up and take notice with he scored the third of Brazilian's 5 goals 1958 final, calling for a pass from Nailton Santos and controlling the ball on his chest, waiting for it to drop. Used to flip over the head of Swedish defender Joel Gustafsson before running around him and volleying the ball past the goalkeeper. There was a signature move, the equivalent of Puskas, drag back, craft stunts, or Maradona's gambetta, and it was accomplished by a teenager. His mind was clear, barely older than the boy who they tried to imitate it in their school playgrounds. It was, he wrote in his autobiography, one of his all-time favorite goals, and according to his Brazilian club, Santos, he had 1091 to choose from. Because I was very young but no one ever saw a goal. He wore the number 10 shirts for the first time during the tournament, doing more than anyone to give that magic number its luster and its association with the creativity of the most advanced kind. Years later, it was claimed that Brazilian team management submitted their player list without mentioning individuals' numbers. Apparently, they were assigned by a FIFA official. A year later, age 18, he and his teammates faced England in a friendly at the Maracanã. Bobby Charlton remembers the anticipations he felt when Pele brought the ball to him for the first time, anticipating the Brazilian to pass and move, as was already his most characteristic gambit. Charlton found himself the victims of sudden and devastatingly effective dummy. Those enthralled by the 1958 exploits look forward to the next World Cup final in part because it would give Pele a rare chance to see him in action again. This was long before foreign teams and players became known in Britain. Although a desire to retain Santos, services ensure they regularly travel to Europe for lucrative fixture. Thus, they kept him out of the clutches of teams against whom they appeared in exhibitions matches such as Juventus, for whom Umberto Agnelli took him to lunch in Turin and offered to open negotiations for his signature for $1 million, an unimaginable sum in 1961. From that perspective, the 1962 final in Chile would have been a serious disappointment. Brazil opening match against Mexico in Vina del Mar. He beat 2 men before crossing for Mario Zagallo to score the first goal and then dribbled past 4 other defenders before slotting home with his left foot to complete the scoring. But 3 days later, at the same stadium against Czechoslovakia, he felt a concussion when he took a pass from Garincha, dribbled towards goal, hit a shot against the post, and stretched the reach the rebound. In the pre-replacement era, he remained on the field, a passenger of no functional value. He would later credit the Zigches, the particularly Jan Lala and Jan Papulaha, for refusing to take advantage of more penalties, knowing he was unable to do them real damage. They gave him space wherever he had the ball. It was one of the best things in my football career, he wrote. Things were very different in 1966. English fans who had been waiting to see him firsthand were disappointed when he succumbed to the close attentions of Bulgaria's Dobromis Joseph and Portugal's Zaus Moraes, two butchers whose group consisted of relentless tripping and hacking. The stage resulted in him being carried off the pitch of Gadishan's Park by the team doctor and measure. A sight of intense sadness, it may have been an illusion created by television image, still black and white, but the industrial depressions of northern England seemed entirely the wrong stage for him and his compatriots. As incongruous as the sitting of look black in anger in the sunshine of Copacabana beach. Brazil crashed out of the competitions with 1 win and 2 defeats, and Pele vowed never to play the World Cup again. As the Silicao prepared for the 1970s tournaments, he resolved block after he scored his much anticipated 1000th goal in 1969. A penalty against Vasco da Gama. He looked to make another mark in the competitions, and there was a significant change at the top of the Brazilian Football Association (CBF). The role of head coach was taken over by Zagallo, his old teammates and friend, who assembled a group of assistants to take care of the fine details of preparations to prepare Britain's Olympic cycling squad in such a way that the margin of victory was 3-1 half a decade later. Pele has the figurehead, but Zagallo also empowered other senior players, notably Carlos Alberto and Garsons, to give their opinion on selections and strategy. A devout Catholic since childhood, Pele helped lead a daily meeting where almost the entire team gathered for prayers, not for winning tournaments, but for others, such as the sick of those enduring the war in Vietnam. He spoke about the duty of young players to take the business of football seriously and not to waste the opportunity that the World Cup offers. We lived as a real family, he remembered, and the team responded with the series of sensational performances that earned them the title of the best international team ever seen. Pele himself is remembered of his incredibly brave attempts to dummy and Uruguayan goalkeepers and shoot from 60 yards against Czechoslovakia. Neither succeeded, but both left an indelible impressions. His no-look sideways tap came at the end of an inimitable example of interplay for Jairzinho to fire home in a pulsating 1-0 defeat to England in the group stage. His last World Cup goal came in the final against Italy, a snap of a neck muscles to meet a cross at the far post, then leap into Jairzinho's arms for a deafening image of the goal celebration and another selfless shot square pass. The end of a complex passions movement this time started a thunderous roar with Carlos Alberto scoring Brazilian's 4th goal. He continued to travel the world with Santos, replenishing the club's cupboards and giving 10,000s of people a first-hand glimpse of his brilliance. Finally, at the end of the 1974 season, he called it a day. At the age of 34, his career in first-class football was over, but a new and unexpected challenges remain. The following seasons, he signed for Warnersboro and bankrolled Newark Cosmos to compete in the North American Soccer League. The United States was the only place in the world where he could walk the streets without being mobbed. That would change with the additions of Franz Beckenbauer in his new adventure, making brief appearances in the fashionable Cosmos game as he visited Studio 54. He was paid $7 million more than he earned in his entire career with Santos, a deal that was negotiated with the record company executives who founded the club and who included a recording contract as part of the deal, along with various text minimizing measures. Yankee Stadium in the Bronx or Giant Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey, there was not much more to the music, but it promised that same and often earned a good time, including the 1977 NASL Championship. His retirement at the end of that season was celebrated with a match between his two clubs, in which he scored for both sides, which preceded the league's fragile popularity. Away from the pitch, His romantic life was a tangled affair of 3 marriages, half a dozen children, and strange paternity claims. His business ventures also often end unhappily, thanks in large part to a poor choice of collaborators. But her life was eventful and full, whether she was steering the escape to victory or visiting Buckingham Palace to receive an honor. Although Pele had a falling out with notorious Brazilian football administrator Ricardo Teixeira over his company's rejections of a bid for television rights, in general, he was not one to take issue with the game's rulers. Sepp Blatter and FIFA's Jeremy Champagne were the first to thank on the acknowledgements page of his autobiography. He became a goodwill ambassador for FIFA but had no intention to embarking on a coaching career. Although for a time he helped his old teammate Clodoaldo with Santos junior teams, in which he saw the talents of Robinho and Diego. Basically, however, he was now a professional diplomat and a well-paid one at that, traveling from one tournament or commemorative event to another, smiling and shaking hands everywhere. At least it allowed him to operate on a level above cynicism and remained a symbol of the idealized Jogo Bonito. In 1994, rejecting the views of previous Brazilian presidents, he accepted a request from Fernando Henrique Cardoso to become the country's sports minister. He campaigned for club to be run in a more ethical and transparent manner, for Brazilian players to enjoy bossman-style freedom, and for the league and CBF to be separated, as had happened in England Premier League.
I think for the first time in the history, Brazil has a better midfield back. The defensive system is better organized than attack. Brazil always was, the team who play with the best players in attack. Always. This is the first time Filipão, he has a problem to set up the attack. We have an excellent midfield back. Was excellent, I think.
He made less resistance where the launched program of Olympic villages in cities around Brazil, aimed at giving organized sports to children in quiet town. I didn't realize that being in politics was a one-on-one battle. He reflected and resigned to be able to commentate at the 1998 World Cup in France. As a spokesperson for a credit card company, he gave interviews and press conferences where he was sometimes too eager to say something that would please his audience. When speaking to the English press, for example, he would definitely single out an England player for favorable comments. Sometimes his judgment amused his audience when, while addressing a meeting of the international football press, he praised Nicky Butt as the best player of the 2002 World Cup. But he retained his era. Like Sterling Moss or Arnold Palmer, he made his life's business his life's work, while never finding the work difficult. Through all that he went through, all the hurtful injuries and business results he endured, no lasting shadow fell on his ability to embody the project and essence of a simple game to which he gave new beauty and meaning, and most of all, the joy that will continue to radiate whenever his name is spoke. Generations after generations to football fans will remember him for his outstanding football games and personality. At the age of 82, on 29th December 2022, one Thursday, the sporting icon passed away after a long battle with cancer. Surrounded by his family in a Sao Paulo hospital, we are the very lucky generations that we watched him live before he dies. His legacy cannot die. Pele will be in our memories for the rest of our lives. You will be on the path of our journey, and the football world is empty without you. We love you very much. Wherever you are, stay well. If you like this video, please support me with just one like and subscribe to my channel. It takes less than a second to click, because it makes more inspired me to make more video for you. Thanks for watching.